Hello everyone, we hope you're all doing beautifully well. We're cracking on with our DCS World developer interviews, and today we have the pleasure of the Magnitude 3. We've got 4 chaps that make up the Magnitude 3. Novak, Michael, Radu and Rudel. Sorry for my pronunciations, but I always get it wrong. We've got the usual questions. Now, disclaimer, as ever, these questions all came from the valued viewers, the public, and so there will be some that are excellent, some that are okay, and some that are just downright stupid, but that's how we do it. We like the public to be able to ask anything they want. And as I explained to Novak first time we met, this is all about making the developers in DCS World, as well as Eagle Dynamics themselves, more accessible. So it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. The public or the customers can actually ask questions of you. Thank you very much for you guys for giving up your Saturday night to come and speak to little old me. That's much appreciated, obviously. You guys I'm not supposed to show any favoritism. I'm supposed to be completely neutral. However, you guys I'm a real big fan of, because you do planes I really like. I like 50s planes, maybe delving into 60s. I love Mig-21. I love the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. And as well as that, you do modules that aren't necessarily going to be big sellers. They're not Tomcats, they're not Strike Eagles, they're not Hornets. They're just stuff that presumably you guys really like. I find that very virtuous and good. Before we crack on with the questions, anything from Magnitude?
Well, I'd like to say thank you for inviting us for this interview, and thank you to everyone that's been supporting us throughout the years.
Okay guys, so we're here to talk about your latest 2 modules that are in the pipeline. The F8J, and I keep going to call it the Corsair. Of course it's not, it's the Crusader. I always get it mixed up with the A7 for some reason. It's the Crusader, and it's something that I'm really interested in. It's right up my alley, that aircraft is. And pretty much the same thing with the F4U as well. And before anyone says, no, that's not a Phantom. Everyone seems to think it's a Phantom. It's not. It's the Corsair. It's even cooler than the Phantom, although the Phantom's pretty cool. Okay, guys, let's crack on with the questions, and we'll just see where it goes. This is, like ever, with anything GR, this is chilled, relaxed. Feel free to talk about anything you want. You know, it's not rigid. First things first, let's see if we've got a sensible question. Will you be making an F4E module? Right, so that's the Phantom. The guy thought it was the Phantom. So we'll skip over that one. That's just showing you this is not modified. We'll skip over that one, guys. Next, it feels like so long since the F8 Crusader was announced. What timeline are we looking at for that module in DCS, if we're allowed to know anything?
We'd love to give timelines, but over the years, we've watched the user base become not so friendly to the third parties in regards of giving timelines of, a lot of times we can't meet these timelines, although we'd like to. We prefer not to give one yet.
You know what? It's probably just the best way because you've got so many. I mean, again, there's a lot of stuff you can't say, and there's some stuff I can't say as well. But I can completely understand why it is really hard for you guys to not be able to, to be able to say, oh, I want it to come out in June or whatever, and have it overrun because of problems X, Y, and Z. And it's annoying, but that's just the way it is. If you have to stop giving timelines, you stop giving timelines. So that's fine. Anything on that before we move on to the next question?
Well, let's just say that we're one of the slowest developer team out there.
For question 4, I'm not sure where 3 went, but 4 here. Will you be using Eagle Dynamics modelling for the AIM-7 Sparrow or your own, like Heatblur? Now, I'm being a massive noob here, guys, because I actually didn't realise the Crusader had Sparrows. Am I wrong, guys?
Unfortunately, Sparrows were only for the special project for the Super Crusader version. I was also puzzled by this question. Was uncertain whether it's for Corsair or Crusader.
Roger. Yep. Okay. Because I was just blasting down this earlier. Yeah, and I don't remember them ever firing this missile.
We do know that we'll have to be developing an AIM-9G, I believe. What was the other one here, Mike?
The C version was the radar guided.
Right. The next one. Is the F4U going to whistle? I don't know what that means. What does that mean, guys? Did it whistle?
At certain speeds and angles of attack on the wing, the machine gun ports on the holes would cause a whistling sound as the aircraft was flying. It's something we implemented originally during the airshow preview. It was hard to hear over the commenters. It's something we're still working on to improve the sound quality.
How interesting.
It was the radiators opening that you can see in the Corsair images close to the wing attaches to the fuselage. There were openings on the both sides with little fins inside and the cooler, oil cooler, and those little wings were creating a whistling sound as the speed increased, and Corsair was named Whistling Dead.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm just looking inside the front of one of those apertures right now, and that's very interesting. Now, I've seen this aircraft myself several times at Duxford and other air shows, and I've never actually heard it whistling, but I obviously wasn't listening close enough. But okay.
Or you can Google it or search YouTube for the Whistling Dead, and the Corsair will appear.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting, guys. Okay, thank you for that. Let's push on to our next one. Another silly one, but that's where it is. Will there be a Rio? No, because it's not a Phantom. Next, is the MiG-21's radar alcohol cooled in DCS?
Well, this looks like a question for me, obviously, since I programmed that radar. And I have to tell you that no human liver has been injured during the development of that radar. Okay, wow. So yeah, it's a radar. It's alcohol cooled. Yeah,
Roger.
Yeah, I'm not drunk. Yeah.
Are there any other aircraft that use that, or is it just the MiG-21 as far as we know for a coolant?
I think possibly the 19. I'll have to look it up.
Okay. Very good. Next, we're back to the F4. Will the F4U be able to carry as much armaments as it did in real life?
Well, it certainly will be capable of carrying a full load of ordnance. We're talking about a variety of bombs. There was also a possibility to carry some smaller missiles, or rockets, should I say, since those were not unguided thingies. And later on, it was also possible to carry the tiny teams, which is the larger variant of the rocket, specifically developed to destroy certain larger concrete facilities such as bunkers.
Interesting. Just looking on Wikipedia here, and I know it's Wikipedia, but I've got 6 for this aircraft, 6 times half-inch M2 Brownings, and below that I've got 4 times 20mm cannons. I'm guessing it's either you have the 6 Brownings or the 4 cannons. Which ones are you model got, guys?
6 Brownings. The 20mm cannon version was the F4U-1C, and it was specifically developed to different tasks, which demanded a higher volume of fire.
Anything else about the payload of the aircraft before we move on, guys?
There's one more weapon we'd like to do. We still have to model it first. And that would include the radar guided bat bomb.
Oh wow! Hang on, I think I know about this. Could you tell it? Wow! Look at that. So, are you telling me an F4 could carry that? It looks enormous.
It was actually used during the war.
Wow, that's amazing. So, would this be guided by the pilot, like a bullpup type affair, or is it a different?
It had a self-guiding radar.
Ah, wow!
It's much more primitive than bullpup. It's I mean, it's reminiscent of the mid-40s era.
Yeah.
It's the first attempt, so.
But what an interesting piece of history that is, guys. Right. So at the moment we don't know if that's going to be a thing or not, but it's a possibility.
Depends on availability of documentation. That's basically it.
Roger. Okay. Well, I'll leave that there. But I'm glad I asked that question because I'd love to see that in DCS. I love these first incarnations of the guided weapon. I mean, this is like the great grandfather of the AGM-65, or well, maybe not quite because it's radar guided, but you know what I mean.
JSOWs.
Yeah, that's exactly right, isn't it? It's JSOW. Wow.
Grandfather of JSOW.
Very good. Okay. Next, are there any other versions of the MiG-21 in the plan, like the F-13 or the PFM?
Not at the moment, but it's come up in discussions a lot about doing other variants, and it wouldn't be hard to do art-wise. However, I know one of our members, a couple of our members would like to do a variant.
Roger.
The Lancer D by the Romanian Air Force, excuse me, and PFM by the Polish Air Force.
That's interesting. So we've got the BIS, guys. Could you explain roughly? I've never understood this. Can you explain roughly what the BIS is? Is it like the latest version, or I never really got my head around it?
bis was released as a so-called in Russian изделие 75. That means version 75. It's the last version that Soviet Union produced as the best possible version of that particular airframe. So everything else that has been done in different countries as an upgrade or modernization or whatever you call it are basically individual cases and not widely spread or widely used outside those particular countries. And the other version of original MiG-21 that you're mentioning and that you maybe some of your users wants to know, basically they don't have anything particularly new or advanced to bring into DCS. You know, from that perspective, there is no particular point of doing that aircraft. In spending time and resources in developing aircraft just to exist there. It will be nice to have it or occasionally fly it, but nothing particularly new compared to the BIS version, you know. So it's the best official version that existed.
Roger. That's what I kind of guessed it would be. And again, we've got the MiG-15 bis as well, which I'm guessing is the same thing, the kind of ultimate Soviet version. But okay, guys, fine. The next question is interesting. Again, very popular, the MiG-21, so it looks like we're going to have lots of questions. Will the MiG-21 get the Lazur GCI guidance? Could you explain what the Lazur GCI guidance is, please, guys?
Lazur was the Soviet name for the system of distant radio guidance, controlled interception. So basically, pilot would have one instrument in the front panel, and that instrument, of course, had a receiving part, which would receive the signals from the ground-controlled interception station, where the interception controller will send, without speaking in the open air, on the open channel, would send commands or instructions what to do with the aircraft, where to fly, and how fast to fly, when to turn the radar on off, when to turn the afterburner, and so on, in order to position the interceptor, the fighter, beyond the target or in proper position for the missile or guns use. The purpose of this device is to send the protected signals that were hard to jam at the time, and to avoid open channel communication, that all the channels that are open are listened, monitored, and also to cover up the tactical, how would I say, approach to some combat situation. Now about the implementation, it's an interesting question. Essentially, it could be done by third party for any fighter aircraft of the Soviet origin, and we can also do it for the MiG-21. But if we ever decide to do it, it won't come as a cockpit 3D mesh change, because it would be complex and it will mess things around, and you would need to have additional files and so on. But it's possible to do it as a pop-up screen or something, pretty much similar as the control screen when you press right control enter, for example, when you see where your controls are, or similar to that GPS device that is also implemented. So technically it is possible to do as a pop-up screen. However, on the other side, it's much better way to wait for Eagle Dynamics to eventually maybe to provide the infrastructure to do that, to implement that device.
Roger.
And if it is ever implemented in MiG-21, I would go with a pop-up pop-up screen rather than changing the cockpit mesh.
Roger, guys. That sounds really good. I just interviewed a guy on a J35 Draken. Obviously, same, relatively same era of technology, and they had a similar system, I believe, radio-based, where the GCI could send up intercept data off radio directly to the aircraft, and it would display it relatively similar to the 21. Very interesting, guys. Okay, thanks for that. I think that would actually be really cool, because intercepting is really hard, especially in a legacy aircraft without a super duper Link 16 or something. It'd be a really interesting part of flying. Question 14. What, if anything, is being worked on for the CE2, the Christen Eagle 2? Concerns about the flight model, especially roll rate, still pepper the forums. I don't use the forums. I did actually complain about the roll rate, and it may have even come from me originally. I do reviews on all of the aircraft, and the Christen Eagle, we did a review and we rated it highly. We really liked it. The only thing I wasn't too fond of was because it rolled so quickly, and that's what I said. Then, however, I didn't know you guys then, but I do know Eagle Dynamics. I spoke to Nick Gray, who you probably know from Eagle Dynamics, who's flown one of these, and he explained to me very carefully that it matches. The roll rate does indeed actually match the real aircraft. I know it feels weird in a simulator, but it does match the real aircraft. And he told me about why, the wings, and about the weight of the wings, and the rough forces, and that's just how it is. That's how the real one is. So that put that to bed, and I did a follow-up video just explaining what Nick said. Obviously, some guys still aren't happy on the forums, but as far as I'm concerned, it was sorted out.
I'm pretty much satisfied with flight model. It's very advanced, considering that Christen Eagle has 2 wings, which is very unique in DCS and in many other flight simulations. And I don't think that other aircraft has a flight model designed to that level of complexity as the Christen Eagle. Some things are still a bit off, I have to admit that, but those things are out of our direct control, so to say. So once when the situation improves in that field, I'll surely improve those things. It's not forgotten plane. It's
Roger.
Not done. The opportunity arises, we will improve it.
Roger, thank you for explaining that, Novak. That's all very clear. Excellent. Good. Okay, let's push on, guys. Question 15. Back to the F4. Is any of the development for the F4U being taken from Eagle Dynamics' experience with the P47, especially the engine work? This has got a similar or the same engine as the P47, hasn't it, guys? Double wasp, isn't it?
Pratt & Whitney are 2800, but they are quite different due to use of turbocharger in the P47.
Okay, Roger. As to the question, you guys worked with ED regarding that, or have you done it completely separately and differently?
It's separate work completely. We don't share anything there code-wise. We don't see their code. All we can do is to take the aircraft as we are doing right now and testing it. Just to compare performances and to compare aircraft behavior, to compare flight characteristics and behavior in the flight and so on and so on. So that's the only connecting point between those 2 aircraft at this moment.
Okay. Where are we? 16. Given that there are little to no assets for the Pacific Theatre, I'm guessing we're talking about aircraft carriers and stuff. How does the F4U fit in the DCS universe?
Well, we all have to use our imaginations, like a lot of us did in the early years of flight sims. You use what you have. You can use a channel map. You can send Corsairs after German boats or German artilleries. You can use the Caucasus map with Lend-Lease Russian F4Us going after German 109s. You could just use fake war scenarios.
Roger. You know what, guys? It's right up our alley. I mean, the F4U, it's got an arrestor hook, hasn't it?
Yes.
Roger. So and we've operated so many things off carriers that we're not supposed to operate. I mean, we'll happily operate it from a Stennis or a super carrier. You know, someone at some point is going to bring out a World War II ship, as in a carrier, and then we can put it on there. But until that happens, we'll be happily operating it off whatever we've got.
If I may only add one thing there, we're basically waiting also for the Mariana Island map,
yes,
which Eagle Dynamics at some point will release, and that will be probably the closest ever situation to get the realistic or historically correct scenario for the Corsair.
Roger. Now I've not been able to speak to Eagle Dynamics about that yet. Does anyone know if that map is coming with naval units, or does anyone not know?
No idea.
No idea.
Roger. Okay, guys.
Didn't they say they were making an Enterprise class carrier?
What's Enterprise class, Santi? What's Enterprise class?
It was one of the first of the newer type carriers in World War II.
Ah, okay.
That would tie those boys together nicely, because the new Enterprise is with the F7, I believe.
Oh, really?
I think. Don't quote me on that, but
Right.
I think that's what Simon or Nick said at one point.
Okay, guys, I'll have to go and do some. I'm very good at digging. I'll go and do some digging and find out. But I'm sure they've not overlooked it. I'm sure it will come with a relevant carrier at some point. Okay, guys. Anything else about that question before we move on?
F4U was, as you know, as you might know, was used in Korean.
Yes.
So basically, it was essentially outperforming first jets there that were used for different tasks. And he was particularly good in close air support missions or missions when you need to engage ground troops or ground enemy assets with either unguided rockets or guns or whatever, or go to reconnaissance missions. So I believe that once the Corsair joins the DCS family, many users will love it, you know, because it's very nice and very peculiar. Very hard to kill aircraft, very good armored aircraft with a significant firepower that he can deliver. And I'm particularly interested in how that engine with such a low heat signature will perform with the heat-seeking missiles and stuff. I guess you'll have to get really close. And Corsair was fast.
That's interesting. I'm just they were still producing them in 1953, I see. So that's interesting. Well, the other thing is that as well as World War II, like you said, it covers the Korean War. So you can put it together with the F-86 and the Mig-15 as well, which I hadn't even thought about.
Well, there is a Korea 52 server online, so that's the first place to look for it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, then the World War II servers, I would imagine.
Roger. Very good, guys. Very good. Okay. So, back to Mig-21 again. There are rumours of a Mig-21 revamp, Mig-21 2.0. I've heard this as well. Is this true? And if so, can you elaborate on potential updates and features?
This is mostly an art side update, which would consist of 100% overhaul of the external model and the cockpit, which would include all new textures and everything.
Roger. A bit like the A10's just had, yeah? Even the legacy A10.
Pretty much.
How interesting. Okay, right, up to a new, the next level of textures and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's really nice to see you guys, and the same with the A10, just not forgetting it, but, keeping it up to date. As computers get better, we really appreciate that because it makes it seem like a brand new plane. Okay, that's cool. Anything else you want to say about that?
Well, and not unless Novak or Roland have anything that they want to add or update for a newer version. I
suppose I should ask, or maybe I shouldn't. I was going to ask, when are you doing it? But
I've already implemented what I call phase one, which is basically mating the old cockpit to the new model that we have. I've been updating, and though it's mostly for the VR users that were complaining about these huge holes in the side frames and everything.
So number 18. What type of navigation equipment will be available in the F4U? Are there any plans to implement the YEZB radio system or the Mark III plotting board? Now, you have to excuse me, I don't really know what either of these are, but can you explain what these systems are and what you're adding, please?
Easily put, they're basically homing systems that you use a radio system to home in on the carrier. Roland, I believe, is in the middle of programming it. He might be able to give more info on what he's doing.
Well, this YZB radio homing system is a primitive radial interception device mounted on aircraft carriers. So, if you're familiar with the Mig-21 radio navigation system with those 360 radials, well, you're gonna get a more primitive version of it with only 12 radials. You're gonna have to guess your way around navigating those radials.
Roger.
But it's usable.
Good. That sounds really exciting. That sounds good.
Yes.
Is this for the carrier? Yeah, this system.
Well, this is actually I've extended the implementation for all the runways in the game, but the carrier will get the particular radio signal you can home into, so you'll get a specific Morse code for that.
So
it's the carrier.
Useful skill to learn Morse code.
Oh yes, it's going to be essential. Yes, forgot to mention that.
Right, I am slowly getting. Now I'm learning my NDBs. I am learning my Morse code now, but it's taking a long time, guys. That sounds good. And is that going to guide you, well, like you said, partially onto a radial for the carrier, or?
I don't think it was meant to line you up with the carrier. It was basically to take you to the carrier.
Okay.
You'd have to use the Mark II eyeballs to line yourself up.
Right, so direction finding if you like, just to the carrier, and then sort yourself out. Right. Okay, guys, that makes sense. I will look forward to using that. Question 20, don't know where 19 went, but who cares? Will there be any AI or static World War II US Navy aircraft like Hellcats or Avengers to populate the environment for the F4U?
We have nothing planned yet. Going on with your next question, we do have assets that are in the works that will be released afterwards, which include some AAA flat guns. But however, after we finish those, and depending how our timeline looks, we could possibly do some extra AI stuff.
Roger. Let me just read that second question, guys, so I can catch up with you. Will you be releasing the F4U carrier's AI0 as a package? Are you going to wait till the Mariana's map before release? So are we allowed to know what these things are, that you're these assets, and how will they be released, as a module or just chucked into the game?
I guess it would have to be like the Chinese asset pack, but we'll have to create a Pacific asset pack.
Roger.
The carrier, though, we'd like to release with the F4U as one package.
Roger.
Everything else will be separate.
Right. Next one. A bit of a weird one. I was just reading ahead. What lawnmower will you use to record the engine sounds for the F4U? The CE2 sounds like either a lawn boy or a Toro, whatever that means. Perhaps a 4-stroke this time. Just joking. Okay. I've already answered that, but anything you want to add to that?
We got a lot of criticism about the sound for the CE2. Although we did everything we could to acquire, as I said, a clean, decent sound sample for that particular engine and the propeller. However, for the Corsair was sort of a legendary aircraft among the aircraft of the Second World War and shortly after that. So there are still a few of them flying, or at least in very good condition, and some of them, even if they might be static, they fire up the engine occasionally. The acquiring sounds, good sound sample for the Corsair engine was not a big deal. So we got a lot of sound samples for that aircraft, and we already selected them, analyzed them, picked up the best ones, and implemented them already in the DCS. And at the moment, Corsair is using those sounds, and the engine sounds, if you ask me, engine sounds very nice. It could always be better, but it sounds very, very nice. We need to extend the implementation so that AI sounds also, AI sounding system also use our sounds instead of P51. And I hope that users will be pleased with the engine sounds for the Corsair when it comes out.
Roger, guys. Yeah, that's one other thing I'm looking forward to is that whopping great double radial. And it sounds great. I'm sure you'll agree it sounds great in the P47 as well. Pump your sounds right up to maximum. 23. Can you develop another Russian full fidelity module like the MiG-21? Everyone loves the MiG-21, obviously. Or do you need access to the actual aircraft and documentation, and is it more complicated?
From an artistic side, we can make anything full fidelity, but normally we would always need documentation. Now, without documentation, it can make things difficult, but it's not impossible.
So for the MiG-21, for example, can I have a rough idea of what kind of stuff you had access to?
With our connections, we have access to about almost all the variants you can think of, except for maybe the Lancers from Croatia and Romania.
So you could physically crawl over an aeroplane, is that right? And literally take photos and stuff.
Well, the MiG-21's been in service for so long, they're starting to pop up in museums all over the place.
Okay, guys, what was the success of the MiG-21 based on, in your opinion, if I may just first of all? For me, when I first got into DTS, I much preferred the F5. It was simpler, it was easier, it was quieter. But then as I learned to fly over 2 or 3 years, it takes a long time in DCS, much more interested in the Russian stuff and the harder stuff to operate, the harder stuff to fly. And the MiG-21, you know, whether you're a good pilot or a bad pilot, it's still it's a difficult plane to fly. And it's very raw, very noisy, and so I really appreciate that, and that's why I personally like it. But what do you guys think about the question?
We can talk a lot about MiG-21 history, you know, but to put it short, MiG-21 was the first third-party module for DCS. Initially, it was done for as a free downloadable module for the Flaming Eclipse 2, and it was based on Lua scripting, very naive implementation. But it actually enabled new simulation that Eagle Dynamics were already working on to actually develop into modular world, as you can see it now, which allows to plug in different things there, not just aircraft, but also either naval or ground vehicles, and also to be opened to other third parties. MiG itself, it traveled very difficult and bumpy road initially, and its significance is and success also is probably greater than merely measured with the statistical numbers or maybe financial reports. The important thing is that users love the aircraft and love the game that is DCS, and lots of new things are in development, and perspective for all involving parties are much brighter than there was in 6 years ago.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know that, so that's brilliant. Thank you for explaining that. 25. Do you intend to include any missions/campaigns with the F4 and the F8?
Yes, of course. For the F4U and the F8, we're going to be including mini campaigns in which if users want to continue, they can purchase one that's going to be sold separately.
Cool, guys. That's a great idea, having the kind of teaser, if you like, and then you can add on to that if you're enjoying it. I don't know if that's been done, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
26. Will you release the F4U with skins for UK RAF and NZ, I'm guessing that's New Zealand, Air Force, as well as USA?
Oh, of course. There'll be a full complementary assortment of liveries, just like we did with the CE2.
Yeah.
Well, I believe we'll have a few air show variants as well from the 50s. I think we'll have a few from the Soccer Wars and a ton of Marines because the artist is a Marine.
Ah, really? Fair enough. Okay. Thank you, guys. 27. Does the cranked wing of the F4U brackets to provide ground clearance for the huge prop introduce any unique flight modeling issues?
There are some peculiar phenomena, so to say, and they are implemented. Otherwise, certain things with this aircraft won't be possible. I mean, it would not be possible to recreate certain aircraft features, so to say, and the way it flies. So there were no issues, you know. There were just research, analytics, and implementation.
Roger. Is this 28? Yes. Will the F4U and F8 fly with wings folded in the now firmly established DCS F8 18C tradition? I apologise. I started that up. I started that when I flew the F18 with the wings closed. It's actually an interesting question. I know it's stupid. Actually, it's not stupid, guys, because I know for a fact an F8 is flown with wings folded up. But have you thought about that? An interesting question. Have you actually thought about is it modelled that if you can try and fly these with the wings packed up?
From a purely historical perspective, I haven't heard of any Corsair flying with wings folded, but as you mentioned, there's been a fair number of accidents, so to speak, since nobody intentionally flies the aircraft with the wings folded, but there's been a number of accidents with the Crusader taking off or launching from the carrier with the wings folded. Even in particular instance with an aircraft being loaded with full ordnance. So there is some magic there must be.
I'll have to find the incident because I'm sure it happened, but
I don't think the F4U has enough wing area.
I thought that. There's hardly any left once you fold them up, is there?
Yeah.
From the perspective of aerodynamics, F4U, the Corsair, had ailerons on the tip of the wing, so to say,
Yeah.
and the foldable part would go vertical, so you'll be deprived of actually possibility to bang the aircraft, and actually trying to bang the aircraft will cause directional stability issues. Then changing the wing surface will greatly decrease overall stability of the aircraft, so it's a mess. And technically, I don't know if the aircraft linkages are strong enough. I think that if you try to fold the wings in flight, the wings will either snap or twist in a very, very weird way. So you would be in a problem momentarily. Technically, if you're asking if it is possible to fly, provided enough speed for the Corsair, remaining fixed wing part is still enough to provide enough lift. But I say that, for example, stall speed would be decreased at least twice. So it would be difficult. And there would be no banking possibility, and stability would be greatly reduced. And basically, it's possible, but you can't do anything with such aircraft. We'll model the forces once we get the damage model done. I'll model the forces and simply calculate if the wing will snap at some point or no. And they will probably snap because, as I said, the linkage is not too great. And as for the F8, it has foldable wing tips, so to say, and ailerons are ailerons are completely on the fixed side of the wing. So technically, for that particular airplane, it could be possible to fly. But then again, there are stability issues, and because stability greatly depends on the wing surface and position of the medium air chord and so on and so on. And the stall speed would be greatly increased, so it would be very difficult to fly such an aircraft.
Roger. Very thorough answer. Lovely, guys. Okay, let's push on to 29. Will the Crusader's variable incident wing be modelled for takeoff and landing, brackets, extends by 7 degrees for increased lift?
Of course, that's absolute necessity, is one of the main features of that particular aircraft, so no worries, that will be implemented and that has to be implemented.
Roger. So my understanding is this is for carrier landings, so that it can fly slow enough, presumably, to land on a carrier.
Or the opposite way is it actually, the way I heard a pilot describe it, it's not actually the wing going up, but the nose going down, so you can see the deck.
That's actually that is, isn't it? Because technically the wing is not changing per se. It's almost like because the body of the aircraft is kind of hanging off the wing, isn't it? That's interesting. I really look forward to seeing how you guys tackle that and how it feels when you do that. And will the RF8 photo reconnaissance version be modelled for a different mission role?
That's something we had planned. That if that would include a lot of 3D model changes to what we have already.
I'm guessing it's
So,
stripped down.
so basically, we could take some screenshots with it.
Yeah, that'll work, won't it? That's our new RF modeling. Pressing the print screen button. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, not enough questions on the F8. I want more questions on the F8. But anyway, let's keep going. Is the F4U coming? Oh, we've already answered this. It's coming with the Brownings. Yep, so we've done that. What is the future of DCS, in your opinion? And what would you like to see in the sim at some point? That's an interesting one.
I can give you my opinion. Oh, go ahead, Roland.
First of all, I'd like to see the whole planet modeled.
Yeah, FS 2020 style.
Yes, something like that. Yes.
Might be a bit of a big ask.
Yeah, that would be the most, I don't know,
Roger.
groundbreaking thing for DCS.
Well, sky's the limit.
Development, yes.
As soon as I have talked about that to them, but it just opens up such a big can of worms that I don't know. You know what? Everyone we've asked that question to said exactly the same thing. Since FS 2020 came out, everyone said they want the whole world modelled a bit like that.
I'd like to see IK solvers be used for animations, especially for pilots, because animating pilots is really difficult. And the IK solvers would immensely make it a lot easier.
Roger. I must admit, the kind of the human side of DCS isn't the best modelled in terms of how they move and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit in 1990s.
But I think from an artistic point of view, they're doing well. They're catching up with industry standards. They finally have PBR, and the simulation is starting to look really beautiful.
Okay, guys, this question is the F4U going to be modelled with the jettison canopy? I don't really understand what they mean by that. Was there a certain version that had the jettisonable canopy, or?
I haven't looked into the Dash 4's variant, but I know for the D's and A's, you had to do kind of a sequence to get the canopy off the rails, and basically you pull these two handles in, and then you jam these two levers forward, and the canopy won't just fall off. You have to push it off the aircraft.
Wow, what?
Yeah, you have to push it off.
I had no idea.
Yeah, but I think that's for instances where they can't get the canopy to slide back. Okay. Otherwise, I think most pilots would just slide it back and jump out.
Next, 36. Is the Crusader equipped with the ANAPQ-1244 radar and the wet pylons option, please?
Basically, yes, that's the very definition of the F8J. It's since it's a modernization of the F8E, the wet pilots. I presume it means that you can place there the fuel tanks. So yes, they will be there.
Sorry, I don't know what's the ANAPQ-1244.
But that's a radar.
That's the radar. Now, it's for presumably search and lock, but not weapons guidance. I think we talked about earlier. There was a question whether there's a Sparrow, but there was no Sparrow as far as I'm aware.
Well, right? No Sparrow, but there was a very special Sidewinder, as Rudolf has mentioned earlier, the AIM-9C Charlie. It basically had a capability sort of similar to a Sparrow, but shorter range, and it's just a very special Sidewinder.
Is it radar guided Sidewinder or radar?
Yes. That's the peculiarity of it.
How interesting! I didn't know such a thing existed. That is really interesting, isn't it, guys? Okay, and
was that the C or the G?
C.
C. Okay.
And is your Crusader going to be getting that, if you can?
We'd like to.
Yeah, it's basically a part of the full range of weapons that were available for the Crusader.
Wow, how interesting. Lots of stuff I'm learning today, guys, because I didn't realise. As well as that, will it have normal Sidewinders? Bs or Ds or whatever?
I believe it'll have the D, the C, and I believe we're going to try to get the G in there as well.
I think the sidearm was developed from the radar.
Yes, from the C.
Sidewinder, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
When they gave up on it.
Very good, guys. Question 38. How different, in your opinion, is the development of a jet module and with a helicopter one. Now, you guys haven't done a helicopter, so I don't know how you can explain that, but any thoughts?
Novak might be able to provide insight. I know he made a small teasing video of Mig-21 floating around in the air at one time.
Well, in essence, the crucial difference is in forces and moments distribution, so to say, the physics, and modeling of some peculiar aerodynamic effects that rotating wing creates. And helicopters, to that matter, are much more complex. And on the other side, they are much more interesting to model from the aerodynamic perspective. Everything else is pretty much the same. You need to create 3D mesh, animate instruments, switches, flips, and systems that came with the aircraft itself. But rotating wing is and rotating tail rotor is main things to be considered for the helicopter model.
Roger. And do you guys have any interest in making a helicopter one day?
Well, we had ambitions to make certain things, but for us, at the moment with the current code base, it's better to stick with the fixed wing aircraft at the moment. But in the future, maybe it's possible. We don't know.
Question 39. How do you intend to recreate the sounds of the two birds? Do you have access to working planes to record the sound, especially for the engine, I guess, guys? Anything to add to that?
We have original recordings from a Corsair. As for the Crusader, that's something we're still working on.
Roger. I was just wondered, is it a normal thing for just to go up to a working plane with a big microphone and capture sound, or is it, I guess?
Well, no, it required, I'm not going to say complex equipment, but professional equipment was used to make the recordings, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they were taken at all different angles. They were taken during flight,
mm-hmm.
inside the cockpit, flybys, all kind of nice things. We have recordings of the switches being flipped,
mm-hmm.
Levers being flopped back and forth. The canopy rail going, not the canopy rail, but the canopy being slid back and forth.
It's nice that, developers actually take that time to do it, because, the average guy like me would have no idea, even if it was the right engine sound or not. So it's nice to see that you guys are doing that, because you could easily just fake it.
Yes, in the end, we can always fall back to lawnmowers.
Yeah, oh yes, back to the two-stroke lawnmowers, boys. Very good. Okay, 40. How and why was the Mig-21 chosen? We've actually talked about this, but I'll read it anyway. How and why was the Mig-21 chosen by you amongst other Soviet fighters of the era? And do you plan to develop another? You fully answered that, but anything you want to add to that?
3 of us joined the team originally while it was still in development. Novak is the original developer on this when it was first started. So he might be better to answer why it was chosen. But I think it might be pretty obvious why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So basically, it was a very popular, widely spread, and that's how it was picked.
Question 41. What is important to you as a team, and what do you focus on when starting a new project?
I believe the key would be, for me, it's communication. It's the key for everything, and I think that goes for any company, to be honest. I mean, if you're not close, if you have a team that's not close and they're always by themselves or not doing much together, you can lose that cohesion,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes the pace can slow down when you're working on a project.
So you guys talk quite often and stuff, and
we try our best.
Roger. Okay, very good. The next one, guys, I think we'll just do very quick fire, so we won't dwell on this. But what is your all-time favourite aircraft and why?
Mine would be the F4 Phantom.
Okay, lots of people will agree.
It's definitely. The reason why is it's something I've been around my whole life. My dad was in the Air Force, and I was basically raised on an Air Force base, and I used to see them as a kid all the time. And going to the air shows, I used to sit on the wings and get pictures. It's just an awesome aircraft.
Agreed.
The shape, the sound, just everything about it.
I have very fond memories of the Phantom. Yeah. Any raises on the Phantom? Any of the other guys?
Yeah, Phantom ×2.
That's what we're going with, guys. 43. What makes, in your opinion, a good module, and how do you create something that speaks back to the pilot, like noise, sounds, cabin shaking, and etc.?
When you think of a simulated machine as a whole, in our case, the aircraft, and basically, as I see it, it's a combination, I'd say, of passion, experience, sensibility, knowledge, and skill that makes one peculiar aircraft appealing to people. It could be anything. It could be a transport aircraft, a glider, or whatever. But you need to imprint some life in it. It's not just technical thing. You model all the forces and there it is. Cockpit looks nice. External model looks nice, and so on and so on. But you need to feel the difference. You need to how to say. Try to imagine or sense how that particular aircraft behaves, flies, fights, and so on and so on. So if I need to compare that with the creation of aircraft, the process of that, with something from the common life, let's think of a writer, for example. All of us can write, okay? And if someone asked us to write a novel or make a diary, we can all do that. But just a handful of us will make their story very interesting, So you need to have a certain talent, then you need to have some skills and knowledge you learn along the road, and once you figure out certain things, you develop some sensibility of the aircraft. So it's combination of everything else. You need to add that grain of salt in what you do in order to get the proper thing eventually.
Yeah, excellent answer. And the key word I felt there was feel. It has to feel right and feel like you imagine the aircraft is going to be. Is it possible to create the UB version of the MiG-21 and we can have it as a trainer fighter as well for a few bucks? My understanding of a UB is its Russian designation for the trainer version. Is that right, guys?
Yes, it's basically a twin cockpit version.
Was it UM and not UB? I think it was Mig-21 UM, or maybe there was some UB version. I don't know.
Not sure.
The latest trainer that they had was UM.
Yep.
Design, as I know it.
Agreed. It is indeed a UM. Yep, that's fine. And to answer the question, is there any interest in doing that, or are we going to leave it as the single-seat fighter version?
Well, technically it could be done. The majority of work would be once again on the 3D side, because you're basically creating two cockpits. Two cockpits are almost two airplanes, almost. So it's complex from that perspective. From perspective of usability in DCS, it would be nothing more than one interesting peculiar aircraft which you can have several hours of interesting time, and that's all. Because the combat capabilities of that aircraft were very, very modest. It had only two launchers and no radar, and very limited other equipment that is related to combat. And the only interesting thing would be to sit in the back cockpit and look through the periscope and feel pretty much like in a submarine that is attempting to land on the concrete strip.
Very interesting. Next, bit of a strange one, is the current situation with the virus affecting your goals and dates as a developer, or does it not affect you?
I think it depends on each of us, or affects maybe differently. In my case, since I'm especially focusing on the research for the modules, it's certainly limiting the possibilities to access, for example, the museum or archives due to movement restrictions, particularly across the places. Like, I'm not even saying the countries, but cities, even so.
Well, we'll find out for sure if it'll affect us in the next few months.
Yes, exactly.
For what we have planned coming up.
Roger. Okay, guys. Do you think, political, DCS politics, do you think the balance have shifted towards Blue 4 in DCS way beyond recovery. So we're talking F-14, F-16, F-18, and whatever else. Any thoughts on that, or are you just staying clear of that minefield?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of like fashion. It's a fad. You have someone comes out with something and everyone follows along. But I think the market for Red 4 is still there. There's a lot of people that still want to see Russian aircraft built.
Agreed.
I guess it also depends what part of the game you play. If you pay a visit to something like a Cold War server to try to fly it, you might actually be surprised that the situation is often reversed. It's the red that dominates the skies.
Yep, fair enough. I've been in plenty of those guys. Okay, last official question. Is it hard to choose a certain variant of the plane being developed and stick to it all the way instead of going for a Frankenstein one, combining historically not accurate parts and options on the same airframe? Now, I've interviewed all of the developers now, apart from Razbam, and we have said some of them have had to combine variants together because it's just not possible to get access to research.
I guess I tend to agree to that. We originally planned on releasing the F8L variant, but there just wasn't enough documentation, so we decided to start working on the J instead.
Roger, I see. So that's a big problem, I suppose, trying to get access and get hold of information.
The key answer basically to is the more documents, the more materials you obtain, the further you can push it.
Roger, yeah. There was only 61 built.
There is also another thing. When you try to implement a certain thing into DCS, you're relying on the DCS, so to say, infrastructure that is already there. If something that should support your work that don't exist, you need to switch to something else to compensate. If you can implement certain aircraft system because there is no support for that, you need to offer alternative. For example, that's the point. And the DCS is there are a lot of things that could be done in DCS and still are not done. And there are constant, I believe, not just from us but also from the other third parties. There are also probably constant requirements towards Eagle Dynamics to enable support for this and that and this and that and so on and so on. So in some cases it's necessity, in some cases it's maybe a choice, and as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, then there is no other option.
I have a question.
Send.
If you don't mind talking about it, at the very start when we were setting up, I think you briefly touched on one of the guys was disabled and was, I can't remember the words he said.
Michael, I think. Paraplegic?
Quadriplegic.
I mean, that's amazing that you're developing a module for the program, and that's quite a heavily disabling a thing. How do you just I don't know how to explain that to me, or you explain that to us, how that affects you.
It's not too hard. I'm a quadriplegic, but I'm what's considered a low level, so I can still use my arms. I just can't use my fingers. So I use a trackball and I can use the keyboard, but I just push one key at a time when I'm doing things. It takes me a little bit longer to actually work on a module than, let's say, someone that can use all their fingers. But I'm working. I'm having fun.
That's pretty amazing. That's something amazing to overcome. Fair play to you.
Roger. I got another story. Sorry, I don't know the kind of terminology, but we've have a similar thing with one of myself and Alison's good friends. He is, and I forgot how he got injured. I think it was in doing sport, and he can only move neck upwards. Okay. So imagine literally neck upwards. Okay. So you'd probably think he couldn't do anything, right? And admittedly he has to have a helper, but he is not just sitting there. He's become like a leading counsellor in the town that he lives in, and he has to go into the town and do various work. I don't know how he does it, but kudos to him. And I think, a triumph over adversity or something like that. I think you would have to. I guess the same with Michael. It's just I don't know. It's good. I can't really think of the right thing to say, but it's just inspiring. That's the word, inspiring, isn't it?
Exactly that. I mean, there's got to be people out there who you know have a disability that makes them computer bound per se, and that's pretty something amazing for them to hear that that's what that person's doing. That's pretty incredible.
Thank you. Well, it wouldn't be possible without the support, from my friends and family. My friends helped me put my computer parts together. I'm a veteran as well, so I'm connected to the veteran affairs. So they have services that have aides that help come get me ready in the morning, and allows me to get to my computer to start work and everything. And of course, I have the great understanding from my coworkers here that understand my situation.
Absolutely.
So it makes life a little easier.
Okay, so we'll wrap up then, guys. First of all, you gave up your Saturday night for me with 4 of you, which is, really appreciated. Answered all of the valued viewers' questions, which was great. 2 modules, like I said to the beginning, 2 modules I'm genuinely actually really looking forward to using, especially the Crusader. Perfect for me. Can't wait for that. So thank you. Novak, Michael, Radu and Rudel for coming. It's much appreciated. I hope to stay in contact with you. Any final thoughts from you 4 awesome humans?
Once again, I'd like to thank you, or at least Grim Reapers and everyone else, for inviting us for this interview, giving us a time to speak our minds and our thoughts about our modules and the team. And I want to thank all the users out there that are still supporting us, and thank you for your patronage.
Brilliant. That's a good way to wrap up, guys. Good way. Very popular guys, you 4. Okay, thanks very much, guys. I'm going to log off now because I'm going to get in trouble with the wife, and I will see you guys in due course.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Ta-ra.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.